Good afternoon and welcome to the DSI NRF Newton Fund Trilateral Chair in Transformative Innovation and 4R and Sustainable Development session. The chair is essentially a research unit with a whole team dedicated to delivering on the three pillars of academia: teaching, research, and community engagement. You will get to hear about the full team through this session. My name is Nabila Noor Mohammed, and I am the project coordinator of the chair, and I will be your facilitator for the session today. The sessions will be presented in three segments. The first segment will be a brief introduction to the chair, what it is about, the key objectives, and our main activities. This section will also discuss the theoretical pillars of the chair, the importance of bringing together various conceptual frameworks. It will also highlight the importance of transdisciplinary co-creation and connecting multiple stakeholders. The session will be presented by our three partners at the chair: Professor Erica Kremambula, who is from the DSI NRF Newton Fund Trilateral Chair in Transformative Innovation, 4R and Sustainable Development at the University of Johannesburg; Dr. Rob Byrne from the Science Research Unit at the University of Sussex; and Dr. Anne Kingeri from the African Centre for Technology Studies. Pardon, Anne. At the end of the session, we will have time for engagement. So at this point, I'd like to ask everyone to please type your questions, comments, as we go through the different presentations, so we can address them then. Some may be responded to in the chat itself, in writing by the presenters, as they get a chance to do so. Allow me to hand over to Professor Erica Kremambula. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Thanks so much for the technical assistance there. So let me start again. Good day, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here and to have an opportunity to present what we're doing at the chair. We see this as a great opportunity to interact with people, with projects, and with teams that share similar interests and those that simply want to connect. I'll use the next few minutes to give an overview of the Trilateral Chair in Transformative Innovation, the 4IR and Sustainable Development, to give you a sense of who we are and what we do. Next, please. So let me start by talking about our partners. The chair was formally established in mid-2019 as an international partnership of three organizations: the University of Johannesburg, the Science and Policy Research Unit, SPRU, at the University of Sussex in the UK, and the African Centre for Technology Studies, ACT, in Kenya. We are co-funded by the National Research Foundation of South Africa and the British Council. The University of Johannesburg is one of the top universities in South Africa, very dynamic and building a very strong profile on frontier technologies, 4IR, and sustainability. I lead the chair's activities at the University of Johannesburg, and I have a background in economics and science and innovation policy studies, and specialize in innovation systems and innovation policy in Africa. SPRU is one of the best-known research centers dedicated to the interdisciplinary studies on STI policy. It was funded by eminent scholars such as Christopher Freeman, Jeff Oldham, and others back in the 1960s. Rob Byrne and Chuck Daniels are our partners at SPRU, and we will hear from Rob just after me. The African Centre for Technology Studies, ACT, is a development research think tank established by well-known names like Alestus Juma, also with a long history in conducting policy-oriented research in Africa. ACT also hosts Africa Leaks, a key research network in innovation and development studies, where hundreds of African PhD students have been trained over the years through the annual PhD academies around Africa. Africa Leaks had a great session at this conference yesterday, and and Kinjiri is our partner in ACTS. But Rob Byrne and Anne Kinjiri will speak a little bit more about SPRU and ACTS in the presentations after me. One advantage of our partnership is that these partners are not new to each other. We build on existing collaborations that go back many years, and we build on the complementarities that we bring to the table, which creates a perfect platform for the co-creation of knowledge, the circulation of knowledge, and collaboration across people and institutions. Next slide, please. We have other key members at the chair, Rebecca Hanlin, who is currently transitioning to the University of Johannesburg, Chuck Daniels at SPRU, who is leading the TIPC activities in Africa as the director of the African TIP Hub, working with various African countries on policy experimentation and very interesting activities, taking the TIP approach to the rest of Africa. And Johan Schott, who is one of our visiting professors, as well as the chair of our advisory board. Next. Nabila Nur Mohammed and Lerata Mofoken are the backbone of our chair as the project coordinator and the administrator of our unit. Next, please. So moving to the main objectives and the research program of the chair, the main objective of the chair is to address the urgent need for transformation of our socioeconomic systems and to understand the role that particularly disruptive and frontier technologies, which are commonly referred to as the fourth industrial revolution, namely robotics, artificial intelligence, but others as well, can play in achieving sustainable development in Africa. So to achieve the transformation that is needed, we understand that to achieve the SDGs, which include both social and environmental targets, we need systemic changes to our production, our consumption, and our social system. So the chair engages deeply with these questions from a social science perspective to better understand the complexities of how these technologies and how innovation more broadly can be harnessed for sustainable and inclusive development in Africa. What types of innovation efforts are needed, and what is the role of policy? Those are some of our key preoccupations. Next slide, please. So this is an area where very little is known, and we are lacking theoretical frameworks, and we are lacking evidence as well as conducive practices. A lot of it has been discussed over the course of the past 2-3 days in this conference. And this is the case specifically in the context of Africa, but as we've heard, this is not exclusively in Africa, but affects many countries in the global south and in the global north. So to achieve our goals, our research program is shaped around two objectives: building scholarship in two related areas. The first one is building scholarship on transformative innovation in the context of the 4IR, and the second one is on transformative innovation policy in the context of the 4IR. And we separate those two, although they are closely related. Regarding the first one, one of our objectives is to make a theoretical contribution. So the members of the chair specialized in different theoretical streams, all working from a systems perspective, predominantly innovation systems and socio-technical systems. And these frameworks give us a very good insights about how innovation can be steered and become a force of transformation, often looked at as economic transformation and social transformation in line with the SDGs, but there is room for cross-pollination of ideas around across these frameworks. Each one of them has strengths and weaknesses, and there's not sufficient theoretical integration and conversation that has taken place. On top of that, we can see that these theoretical frameworks do not fully address the context of African countries as we see the context changing rapidly under the fourth industrial revolution. So we see the need for conceptual and theoretical insights, and this is what we're trying to address. The second one is a lack of empirical evidence. So we address this through our broad research program, but also by developing in-depth case studies in specific areas. In this respect, this is linked to our PhD program, and our PhDs are mainly gathering new evidence in under-researched areas, and in some cases developing comparative studies. Next slide, please. Our second objective is to build scholarship in transformative innovation policy, as I mentioned. And here the aim is to explore how to influence transformative change through public policy, particularly STI policy. We recognize that STI policy is an important ingredient for systemic change, but more importantly, we recognize that a new type of policy is needed. So the TIP ideas really resonate deeply with our work. This has been discussed in the past couple of days, but we see a lot of value in bringing closer together the processes of research and policy making. As a research unit, rather than seeing the engagement with policy making as mere dissemination, we see more value in co-creation of knowledge, which puts us in the very difficult space of transdisciplinarity, and my colleagues here will discuss some specific examples with projects. We explore new frameworks through our efforts in supporting policy experimentation, and we do that in very close partnership with TIPC, the TIP Africa Hub, the local efforts in South Africa to build a community of practice in transformative innovation policy, together with the Department of Science and Innovation and the Center for Science, Technology and Innovation Indicators at the Human Science Research Council, and Glenda Cruz will speak later about this in this session. So in these efforts, we bring our PhD students as active players, also activating change through their research projects, and we'll hear from some of them as well. Next slide, please. So in summary, what we expect to be the outcome of our collective work is first to address this urgent theoretical and evidence gap. As mentioned before, there are limitations to the kinds of things that we can explore with existing theoretical frameworks and the data that we have. Secondly, we expect to support the advance of policy experimentation in Africa, a type of policy experimentation that leads to transformative change. And thirdly, we are on track to make a tangible contribution to capacity building through our PhD students, but also by supporting a community of practice in transformative innovation policy, involving the policy community and other key stakeholders. And finally, by creating and deepening collaborations, and here's where I would like to emphasize our keenness to exchange, engage with teams and scholars with shared interest, but also to deepen the collaboration across the partner organizations, supporting the mobility of ideas, partners, students, policymakers. Next slide, please. And in the last minute or so, I just want to give you a flavor of the types of work and research that our scholars are doing. So we have our pride and joy in the chair are really our PhD students, our emerging scholars. And just to give you a sense of who is in this unit and who is doing interesting work, we'll hear from Amanda Lee, who is working on financing niche innovations in transport energy transitions. We have Liesel working on sustainable business model indicators, Haboile working on the fourth industrial revolution and the intersection with indigenous knowledge. We'll hear from Juan Dia as well, looking at energy transitions in Côte d'Ivoire. Gerard looking at the cultural and creative industries. Next, please. Other students looking at notions of social justice and socio-technical transitions, others looking at informality, health 4.0, agricultural biotechnology, and other topics related to this, transformations to sustainability, digital technologies, and so on. So you can see the wealth of knowledge that has been generated by our PhD students. Next, please. We have a network of visiting scholars and postdocs and emerging scholars, and a range of opportunities for postdoctoral research fellowships that I would like everybody to look at in our website and in our Twitter. Next, please. And finally, just to leave room for the next speakers and our strong focus on capacity building, which we focus not only on postgraduate training, and we have a number of PhD tracks that accommodate students that want to do their PhDs or their MPhils in issues related to innovation and development, but also capacity building we see as a way of exchanging, networking, and interacting across members of the chair and also outside. And we have a number of sessions that provide a platform for all our members to exchange, to build ideas, and to support each other in pushing the envelope of research in transformative innovation. Thanks so much, and sorry for the technical glitches. I pass it back to Rob.
Thanks, Erica. I have no slides, so hopefully that's going to minimize technical difficulties. So my remit, if you like, is to talk about the research agenda, the theoretical research agenda around, that we're trying to achieve in the or implement in the chair. And just to remind you, it is about trying to build theory on transformative innovation relevant to African contexts and challenges. So that's, you know, building African scholarship. It's not just about the theory, but also helping to build African scholarship in particular on transformative innovation, and actually to extend that to transformative innovation policy. It is about nurturing the next generation of African scholars in transformative innovation. And it is also about understanding the relationships between transformative innovation and sustainability in Africa, which I would assume or hope that everybody participating in this session, one way or another, would already be persuaded that that is an interdisciplinary challenge to understand those kinds of relationships. It is also about working co-creatively, or at least that's the ambition, to work co-creatively with transformative innovation policy makers and policy making. And that takes us into the realm beyond interdisciplinarity to transdisciplinarity, and we'll say a bit more about that. So I won't talk about transdisciplinarity very much. As hopefully was very clear from the last few slides there that Erica presented, developing relationships with the transformative innovation policy community globally. So again, to some extent, that's about transdisciplinarity. But as Erica pointed out on one of the slides when she was talking about the two main objectives of the chair, objective one around the research focus of this, is that our starting point is from looking from and being inspired from innovation systems theory on the one hand, and socio-technical transitions theories. And I would say in terms of this challenge of interdisciplinarity, both of those streams of literature, I think, although very sort of well-respected theoretical literatures, they are also already, I think, interdisciplinary. They draw on multiple disciplines to develop, or have done to develop, the theories, and continue to do so, which is not to say that you know, they couldn't be better, but certainly they are already interdisciplinary. And part of the reason why we draw from those particular systemic bodies or theories is to do with our own, if you like, expertise and interests, but also they do, I would argue, share concepts or some shared concepts. So I think it would be fair to say that both understand innovation as some kind of socially constructed process. They both share ideas about path dependency, about the co-evolution of technologies and the world that we live in. They both share concepts about lock-in, about how technologies get locked into our lives and into systems. and they share concepts about institutions and networks of actors, about knowledge and about capabilities. So there is a lot that's already shared, I think, between the two bodies of work. But at the same time, they focus in very different ways. So the innovation systems theory is primarily focused on, if you like, market impacting innovations in firms, and that's, you know, a very strong, clear sort of contribution that it makes is understanding how innovation in profit-seeking firms happens. Whereas the socio-technical transitions theory is much more about the kind of broader social change or societal change, and how innovations co-evolve with that change, that societal change, how the influence is two-way. It's not simply that about technology influencing social change, but it's also about social change influencing technology and other kinds of innovations. So their focuses are different, and at least in our thinking is that they are complementary to some extent. And so working as from those theories as a basis for trying to develop theory in the chair seems like a good way forward. It is also, I think, reasonable to say that the relationships between the innovation systems and socio-technical transitions theory bodies of work and the scholars who work in those areas and policy making is already actually well practiced. There's already a lot of interaction, I think, between innovation system scholars and socio-technical transition scholars with policy making. Again, that's not to say it can't be better, but it already exists. So there's already an experience of transdisciplinarity that we can work with. The theories have developed in, I think, quite sort of close conversation with practice, and so again, that is you know, makes us optimistic that we can make use of these ideas. But that's we also need to be open to other disciplines, to other theories, concepts, to other methods, and so on. And that is because, again, I don't think this is any longer arguable, but perhaps it is. You know, I think it is fair to say that both transformation and sustainability are complex, always changing, and extremely context dependent. So those issues are, if you like, present an ongoing challenge for scholarship and for theory building. It's not simply that we can come up with a theory that will be applicable for time immemorial in all contexts. So these issues of complexity and context and so on are things that we need to grapple with as we try to develop our research agenda. And part of, if you like, staying connected with the changing nature of these issues is about working in the what we can think of as transformative innovation policy experiments. And again, there'll be more said on this later, so I won't dwell on it. But and I think if you've been following various discussions in this conference, and particularly thinking about the experimental work in South Africa, then you'll understand that there's a lot of translation work, for one thing, between the academic world and the policymaking world and beyond, and that goes both ways. But these kinds of policy experiments are also sources of inspiration and ideas and challenges for theory building, you know, real policy challenges, real evidence about the various context-dependent needs and so on. So that's an important aspect of the chair's work in trying to connect our theory building to real-world issues, essentially. And the global community, because innovation, as you know, I think should be clear in the innovation systems, innovation studies world more broadly, that innovation is not simply something that appears out of nowhere in a particular place, ready-made. It actually involves knowledge exchange across the world, and being connected into that global community is also important. And there are various ways in which we are connected, and which we hope to enhance. Then there are the PhD projects themselves. Apart from being about building the next generation of scholars, are also in themselves a source of inspiration to theory building more generally. So they're engaged with a range of issues, as Eric has just shown. There's also a range of approaches, cases, evidence, and insights. So all of this can support us in building theory and achieving this research objective. Plus other kind of supportive theoretical and conceptual work. And just if you like to finish my presentation on this objective, is just to mention an example of some of that supportive work, where we are currently engaged into what we would call systematic reviews, systematic literature reviews, to understand, in the context of sub-Saharan Africa, the academic literatures on sustainable development and innovation, and on transformative innovation. UJ has already done work on the 4IR, so we're kind of adding to that by looking at these two other aspects of the chair's work. So one review on sustainable development and innovation in Africa, and one on transformative innovation. And we started these reviews with very open questions, so that we could capture the widest range of theories and concepts, methods, cases, evidence that was possible. And from an enormous selection of papers, we're now down to approximately 20 papers for each review. There's some overlap between them, but approximately 20 papers for each of the two reviews that we're doing. And we've already got very detailed annotated bibliographies of those papers, and we've then been working through a sort of bottom-up kind of thematic analysis of that sort of set of papers. That is now well advanced, but not yet complete, and hopefully in the next few months we will actually be able to complete these thematic analyses to draw out kinds of issues that are appearing in the literature, and to use that then as a foundation for building on what we can really do in terms of first of all bringing together innovation systems theory and socio-technical transitions, but also what kinds of concepts and methods and approaches and so on are most suitable, if you like, for developing this African scholarship on transformative innovation and sustainable development. So the reviews in themselves won't be the final point, but they will be hopefully a strong foundation upon which we can then begin to identify where we can start to develop the concepts that already exist and combine those, and or develop new concepts more fitting to the challenges that are faced by Africa. And so with that, I would like to now hand over to Anne, if Anne is there. I think you managed to log on, and to your presentation. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? So, do we have the slides, or can I just go ahead and share my thoughts? Great. I'm going to be sharing with you about African Center for Technology Studies as one of partner of the chair, and what what ACTS is doing to enhance transdisciplinary research. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, thank you. transdisciplinarity is quite critical in building strong systems. And I think this is what the previous speakers were trying to allude to, because basically the chair, this is what the chair is trying to do, to enhance, an environment for transdisciplinarity. And ACTS is actually trying to do this in different ways. We realize that this particular, approach, it is very, very critical to problem solving and creating, some kind of an environment for different communities of practice and the knowledge that they're generating to come to the table to enhance a particular outcome. African Center for Technology Studies itself, next slide, please. African Center for Technology Studies, ACTS, is an intergovernmental science, technology, and innovation policy think tank, which is about 20 years old. And it has a mandate to strengthen the capacities and policies of African countries and institutions on how to use STI, knowledge which is coming out of STI activities for sustainable development. We do engage in policy-oriented research, analysis, and advocacy, which is supposed to inform formulation and implementation of STI policies for economic growth within the region. We do have quite a number of programs that inform what we are doing, and the current strategic plan has got activities that are generating knowledge in STI, in energy, in agriculture, as well as climate change. With regards to how we are enhancing transdisciplinarity as an organization, we do have what we can call inclusive approach. And basically this has to do with trying to bring quite a number of actors on the table and trying to make sure that they participate. So the essence of inclusivity, and to make sure that they participate in the process. But more overall, as an organization, we have adopted what we are calling a systems-based approach. And this approach, it's trying to enhance, creation of a level platform where, different actors, whether it is individuals or organizations, can actually come together and interact and engage in different ways to share information, to solve problems, as well as to for mutual learning. Activities are organized within the organization for actually establishment of relationships in what we are calling, an innovation system approach, organized around sectors, organized around, bordered around, sectors, technologies. And this way we are able to bring like-minded actors to form very, critical relationships, which are relevant for, advancing, this kind of transdisciplinarity. The capacity building activities that are being undertaken within ACTS, they are organized in such a way that their ultimate impact is to influence policy and practice. But basically how they are organized, we can argue that they are organized in a holistic manner, in such a way that when the participants come together, the main idea is to enhance their participation in a way that when they are out of that particular capacity building activity, they'll be able to influence, policy and practice in an environment which they come from, which is basically interdisciplinary in nature. We do have quite a number of projects which we can argue that are actually, using this particular approach. But there is one particular project that involves the chairs, the members of the chair, It is called Transit Project. In full, next slide, please. It is called Transit Project. This particular project is trying to transform climate innovation ecosystems through inclusive transdisciplinarity, and it involves, all the members of the chair, including one ecosystem actor, the Kenya Climate Innovation Center, and an academic institution from Africa, from Kenya, JUST, or Jaramogi Oginga University of Science and Technology. These particular actors are engaging in this project, which basically is trying to look at the climate innovation ecosystem and how it provides an integrated framework to seek synergies among the stakeholders who are operating within this ecosystem, with the aim to establish strong relations between the full range of the actors within this ecosystem. This particular ecosystem, the climate innovation ecosystem, it has key stakeholders, the SMEs, or the entrepreneurs, mainly the small and medium entrepreneurs, who have been found to be very, very innovative, and they are creating knowledge which is very, very critical to enhancing the functioning of this particular ecosystem. There is a growing demand for climate innovation from businesses, and therefore the involvement of the small and medium enterprises has been found to be very, very critical. And within this particular platform, the stakeholders are able to come together and identify the challenges that the entrepreneurs are having. And then these other actors, the academics, the policy actors, they come in to enhance, or facilitate the ability for the SMEs to access relevant knowledge, but also to help them to enhance, the functioning of the ecosystem. There are two objectives of this project, where we do have active participation of very, very critical actors in this ecosystem. This is the young people as well as the women, and this enhances inclusivity, which is the key agenda for this particular project. But of course, there's the productive interactions between these other communities of practice, basically the academics, the practitioners, the policymakers, and citizens. And therefore, the overall objective of enhancing inclusive disciplinarity is enhanced within this project. So as I said, there are quite a number of activities quite a number of projects that we are undertaking, but this is just one example that is trying to demonstrate how, as an organization, we are trying to engage and to enhance, transdisciplinarity. Back to you. I think this is who is going to come next. Back to you, Nabila, to guide us.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was really lovely. It was a great oversight of where the chair is. The second segment of the session is about the importance of capacity building. As one of the core objectives of the chair, capacity building for transformative change is not only about the training students, which is essential, but also about building capabilities of key stakeholders across the system, especially decision makers, to act on this transformative activities that we've just discussed. We will hear from our PhD students and their experience as part of the chair. What is unique about the program, and how connecting to real-life issues and policy environment affects their research orientation. Here we will have Ms. Amanda Lee O'Connell, Ms. Juan Dia, and Ms. Ann Noom, who are all current students with the chair. In building relations to our work with the policy practitioners, we will also have Dr. Glenda Cruz from the Center for Science, Technology and Innovation Indicators at the Human Science Research Council. She will speak about the joint efforts at HSRC, the chair and TIPC in building a TIP community of practitioners in South Africa. Professor Rebecca Hannon who was introduced earlier, will speak to the chair's experience in developing a sectorial development plan for microdigesters in South Africa, with an angle of capacity building of various stakeholders. Before we get into that part, I'd like again to remind you to please keep posting questions and comments, which we will pick up on at the end, when we'll have plenty of time to actually go through and engage with you. From now, you will see a video that will appear and it will move directly to Amanda. Thank you, everyone. Robin?
Our chair is an international research program based on a collaboration between 3 organizations: the University of Johannesburg, the African Center for Technology Studies, ACT, which is a think tank in Nairobi, and thirdly, the Science Policy Research Unit, SPRU, which is a leading research center based at the University of Sussex in the UK. The Trilateral Chair started operating in July 2019, and we are co-funded by the South African National Research Foundation and the British Council through the Newton Fund. The program builds on the expertise and long collaboration between the 3 partners and aims to strengthen African scholarship to explore transformative innovation and its policy dimensions in the context of the 4IR and the global efforts to achieve sustainable development. So to unpack this, it is well acknowledged that innovation is a main driver of modernization and development. It is through creativity and problem solving that we come up with new ways of doing things. And it is based on this that countries across the world are dedicating resources and setting up structures to support innovation. And this is particularly important for the context of Africa. But innovation also implies a disruption. It means
Hi, Amanda. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Lee O'Connell. I'm a PhD candidate, and I'm in my 3rd year, or at least I'm embarking upon my 3rd year. And as Prof. Erica showed on the slide, I'm looking at financing niche innovation in transport energy transitions. And that really reflects my broad interest in how finance can or must contribute to transformation and social justice in society, and then also the objectives of the chair. And I'm very fortunate to have Prof. Erica Bula and Prof. Johan Schrott as my 2 supervisors. So reflecting on the capacity building activities, and there have been many events, many projects, many activities, and not just in terms of sort of the diversity of events, but also in what we've been able to do within those. And I've just started down here. I've been able to observe, present, organize, report, reflect, coordinate, facilitate, and interrogate. As some examples. So those are useful skills, obviously, I think. But key for me, I suppose, has been the socialization and what this sort of means about trying to understand how one operates in particular spaces. So I've arrived at this point in trying to engage in policy and research, having spent some time actually in clothing and textiles manufacturing and design, having spent some time in investment banking. And so I'm acutely aware of how helpful it is to understand how institutions, understand the institutions, the norms, the networks that constitute a space, and how challenging it can be to then learn, unlearn, relearn, to figure out how one then is able to contribute. So, I think it helps with possibilities, so the types of spaces, to become aware of what's possible, the flexibility and creativity, so how one can engage, different ways of being, and also what constitutes failure in a particular space. And then, of course, the speed and the pace with which one has to work. So I think a couple of examples would be working on the Sanedi project, which Dr. Hannon will discuss a little bit later. And that's been really helpful to understand the importance of feasibility, access, and interest in terms of research focus, and is in part why I've decided to switch from liquid biofuels as one niche to biogas for transport as another niche for financing niche innovation. I think another example is being part of the experiments and with the TIPSI conference is to think about how to use participatory workshops as a way of doing field research. So bringing in practitioners, politicians, and research to think about how finance can be transformed and how finance can transform. I would also then say that this is a trilateral chair, and with that in mind, what a privilege it is then to be part of a trilateral chair, because it just means that the number of more possibilities, more ways of being. And I think not only that the spaces exist, but that they are also accessible and that we will have support if we try to access them. And I think that's very, that really builds on confidence and is really very encouraging. And then finally, I would also like to commend the chair, because this is my third year. I have not met anyone in person yet. So all of this meaningful engagement has happened online. I know we've all had to do that as we've responded to COVID-19. But, a great thank you to Lerato, to Nabila, to Robin, and to Prof. Erica for being able to make these kinds of engagements available and to make them meaningful. And I'm looking forward to meeting everyone in person as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Juan Dia. We are handing over to Juan Dia.
Thank you, Nabila. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Juan Dia, and I'm a PhD candidate with the chair at the University of Johannesburg. And my research topic focuses on renewable energy and gender, precisely on solar energy and gender inclusion. And my research seeks to investigate the sustainability and inclusivity of the energy transition in Côte d'Ivoire. And some of my research papers look at the participation of women and men in the distribution of solar technology, and also on the political economy of the electricity sector. And I have two supervisors. One of them is Prof. Erica Kramer-Mbula and Lucy Baker. So I'm going to share a little bit about capacity building. So I've been involved in numerous activities with the chair, which contributed to my capacity building. I had a series of training. For instance, I received training on the PhD process, from the proposal writing to the theoretical framework, the methodology, and data collection. And I also obtained feedback on my research proposal. And I participated in other activities, such as the PhD Engagement Week. And I also had a training on the nexus between water, energy, food, and environment with the Idea League School. And I also participated in the PhD students, in the Brown Bragg presentations, where PhD students and postdoctoral present their research and obtain feedback. And all of this has also improved my communication and networking skills. And there's also the conversation with authors, and it's an opportunity to engage with diverse scholars and discuss selected paper and obtain feedback and advice from senior researchers. And there's also webinars and forum, and I participated in the TIPC experiment, where I understood the importance of translating concepts and theoretical frameworks into the language of practitioners. It was a great example of collaboration and co-creation between researchers, practitioners, and policymakers. And I also participated in the TIP South African Colloquium, and I gained organization skills and a better understanding of multiple stakeholder collaboration. And I contributed to the collaborative redaction of a study report for the Sanedi project. And more importantly, I acquired a valuable experience and knowledge on the microdigester sector, including the opportunities, the challenges in South Africa. And I'm going to share a couple of highlights from the program, and these constitute the uniqueness of the chair. So I received invaluable support from different scholars through interactive and informal activities. And there's also a great exposure to transdisciplinary research and perspectives. And there's also a continuous learning opportunities, and I have access to practical knowledge, practical examples on research and policy making. And there's a diverse environment with peers and scholars from different parts of the world. And there's also the opportunity to network with experts and the academic community. Excuse me. And I really appreciate the constant support and the availability of the chair members to provide the expertise on different matters. And I am learning from the experience sharing of policymakers and practitioners. And this helped me to reflect on different aspects in my research. And I gained hands-on experience on co-creation process. And I'll briefly talk about the effects of the capacity building activities on my research. I think now I'm able to better explain and simplify the concepts and the language of my research. And I consider transdisciplinary perspectives, and I constantly refine my research content, and I'm able to better communicate with others, and I had improved on my presentation skills. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. I will now hand over to another PhD candidate, Anne Noni, for her to share her experience as well. Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juan Dia. Just waiting for my slides from Robin. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anne Nomi. I'm a first-year PhD student at the Jaramogi Odinga University of Science and Technology, based in Nairobi, Kenya. And my topic is on understanding the system build-up, external environment, and performance of the agricultural biology technological innovation system, with a focus on genetically modified cotton. Next slide, please. So being part of the chair, I've been able to experience capacity building in various ways. The chair has a custom-made capacity building sessions where students are able to learn different skills and knowledge. So the first one is the PhD Engagement Week, which is a very interactive session where I've been able to where students share how far they've gone in their research, and the different theoretical frameworks that they use. I've also learned how different theoretical frameworks are applied in different research contexts. I've also been able to learn about presentation skills and how to properly articulate the research problem and objectives and methodology. Through the conversation with authors sessions, in addition to having a broader, increasing my scope in particular topics, I've been able to learn research techniques, different research techniques, especially just to mention one, the systematic literature review. I've also been able to learn about academic writing and how to interpret research results. These sessions have been very informative because we are given a chance to interact with very renowned scholars, and you get to ask them questions, and they give very detailed feedback, which have been great. The other session, capacity building sessions, are the brown bag sessions, which are informal sessions where the students get to present their skills, their research, and from these sessions I've been able to borrow a few tips because some students have presented problems that they've faced during their research and that I've also faced, and I've been able to borrow from this kind of the feedback they receive from the others, their peers and other researchers. And next slide, please. So what is unique about what I've found unique about the Trilateral Chair program? It has custom-made capacity building sessions like the ones I've just mentioned, which have been very key in assisting me through my PhD journey, mostly coming from a biological science background. Shifting to social science has not been easy, but it has been made easy through these capacity building sessions, and I've really appreciated it. So the other aspect of the program that I find unique is access to renowned scholars. So the program has a vast wealth of knowledge and expertise. I've found the program to be very diverse in terms of the students and the scholars. Have been able to interact with students and scholars from different countries virtually and different research backgrounds. And the other aspect of the program that I really appreciated, like I mentioned, I'm coming from a biological science background. It's highly accommodating. When I started, I didn't have much knowledge about how different theoretical frameworks are applied, and the staff within the chair have been very patient with me and guided me through the process. Next slide, please. So being involved in the Transit project, which was introduced by Dr. Kinyiri, I've been able to, my research orientation has been affected. In a way, I've been able to learn about matchmaking and matchmaking systems where different students with particular skills are connected to entrepreneurs with particular needs through connecting through intermediary organizations. I've also my thinking of I've been introduced into transdisciplinarity oriented thinking, and where different knowledge and skills and expertise from different stakeholders are used to address a particular issue. And I've also enhanced my understanding on how to build inclusive transdisciplinary relationships between actors, especially with the inclusion of youth and women. And finally, I've been able to increase my understanding of the system approach to innovation. The project uses the National Innovation System approach, and I've been able to see how this approach can be used to solve real life issues. Next slide, please. Thank you. I hand over to Nabila for the next session. Thank you.
To be handing over to Glenda Chris, Dr. Glenda Chris. Thank you, Glenda. Over to you.
Hello, can you hear me? Thanks. Just not sure what that technical hitch was. Thank you, everyone. So just a reminder, I'm Glenda Cruz from the Center for Science, Technology and Innovation Indicators. And we collaborate with the Trilateral Chair and the Department of Science and Innovation on what, in a perspective that one of our participants dubbed a pracademic approach. So can you show the next slide, please, Robin? So South Africa's been part of the TRPC since the beginning, and over the past 4 to 5 years, we've initiated quite a number of diverse policy experiments, and these are all at different stages of development and intensity, and particularly in the way they use the TRP concepts. And so we've set ourselves a goal to create a strong national transformative innovation policy program. And particularly, we're trying to bring all the players together to build a community of practice. And we are trying to deepen this community of practice by deepening understanding of how to work with TRP and the TRP tools, and through our common deep thinking and co-creation of knowledge. And we're also trying to broaden this community of practice, because we find people within other kinds of organizations and government departments who are in effect working with transformative innovation policy ideas, but not explicitly linked to the TRPC. And so we've identified 3 main constituencies that we're trying to connect. And the first is our science, technology and innovation policy actors, and they trying to use TRP to tell a better innovation story. And then we have different government line departments such as energy, water, health, transport, human settlements. And they are trying to use STI to bridge to development. And there's a lot of interest in using the TRP concepts in their development programs. And then thirdly, we are oriented to a constituency of researchers, analysts, people who are based in non-profit organizations and community-based organizations. And here what we're trying to do is drive the localization of the international TIP program, and to help it to make sense in our own policy context. And you have heard some of the previous speakers talking about that process of translation. And of course, we also have to work very closely with TRPC Global to contribute from the South African perspective and the Global South, but also to learn and be supported by TRPC in other contexts. So our main challenge is deepening the conversation. So the next slide, please. So what we've just realized that radical change happens in very small amounts and in incremental ways. And so we are proposing a 3-year program to broaden and deepen the community of practice. That will be collaborative between the 2 academic institutions and the government institution. And we've, as I said, we've got a number of groups. We've got a set of 6 kinds of activities, and we have a set of 4 kinds of groups: those in the global TRP, those who are in the core organizing and driving the community of practice, those who have been active in using TRP concepts in their developmental work, and those for whom we need to do more advocacy to broaden and draw into the community of practice. And we've created a menu of activities for each of these spheres, and we would package these activities from the menu in different ways for the different constituencies. So first of all, in terms of broadening the community of practice, we're aiming to consolidate materials that we've developed. so that we can also contribute to the Mobile Transformative Innovation Lab from a Southern perspective and bringing Southern voices. So for example, we've held a colloquium in October, and we had a number of preparatory activities where we asked those from the active group to respond to reflective questions about how they've used concepts like socio-technical transitions or transformative outcomes and so on. And we're using that, and we've written think pieces and so on. And we're looking at how we can package those and use them as materials. We have videos from our interactions and our colloquium, and these all contribute materials. So the second way we want to broaden our community of practice is using these materials and the work we've done around specific policy experiments to draft policy briefs that we can use for advocacy to bring in new members into the community of practice. And what we found very important here is that we need to deepen understanding of the TRP concepts, but we have to do that in language that's aligned with the way the narratives and the local policy speak. And we see how that's very important, because we have to catch the imagination of policymakers to draw them in, and of public sector officials and civil servants to draw them into the conversation effectively. And for example, some of our core group have said that, our active group of constituents have said they find it difficult to go into their public sector spaces and start a conversation about destabilization and regime change. So we're looking for ways to translate those. And the third way we would broaden the community of practice is to design advocacy campaigns that are for specific groups using the core pack of materials that we're developing. And that is to build relationships and coordinate other transformative initiatives into the community of practice. And then we need to deepen the community of practice. And here we are supporting the structured policy experiments in new settings. And what we've realized is that to be able to take part in a structured policy experiment, a new group that might have been actively working but is new to the transformative innovation policy framework and models and concepts needs a process of capacity building to be able to learn the concepts. And what's important is that it's not just one or two people going to these spaces, but entire teams are building their capacity, and so that they can create organizational environments for change. And then once there's a certain level of understanding, we would have to work in a much more intense way with each group on their experiments to have a structured process using the models in ways particular to promote second order learning for that group to apply the tools to the design and practice of their policy experiments. And then the fifth kind of capacity building activity we're doing is we've realized our core group is of 3 organizations is very small, and as the community of practice grows, we need more people who can work with others and themselves be participating in broadening the community of practice. So we have to grow the expertise to strengthen the wider network and build capacity for those who are already doing experiments to take a role in becoming nodes for broadening the community of practice and being the support to other kinds of new experiments. And then finally, we have realized how important it is to contribute to the academic community of practice. And on that note, I was in a panel yesterday which presented a bibliometric study of published literature in English on TRP. And again, the most of the literature is coming out of higher income countries, out of the UK, US, and the Netherlands. And so we see it as really important to be building an academic contribution from the South to the TRPC and to the innovation networks. So I'm not sure why my slides all say 11111, but that's a technical glitch. And we are working on this joint capacity building initiative with these 6 focus sets of activities over the next coming 3 years. And we look forward to working with those of you who are trying to do meet similar goals in your own contexts. Thanks very much, and over to Becky.
Afternoon to everybody, or morning, depending on where you're joining us from. So I'm going to build on what Glenda said and talk about capacity building with another set of stakeholders that I've been working with in South Africa around microdigesters. And here we're talking about anaerobic systems that turn organic waste into energy or fertilizer. And we're looking at those at the very small scale, at the household or farm scale level. Robin, if you can just share my slides, please. Sorry, we seem to have maybe lost my slides, but I will keep talking and hopefully they will come up. So we've been working on this since late 2020. We were asked to come into a project that involved another University of Johannesburg group, the Process, Energy and Environment Technology Station. Next slide, please. They have been working with the South African National Energy Development Institute and the South African Biogas Industry Association to look at how to advance the microdigester sector in South Africa. And we were brought in to help them think through the social, political, the socio-technical elements to this debate, and help them think about what the sector would look like in 5 years' time. And we've been doing this by working with them to think through what does the innovation system look like. And we've been using the sectoral innovation system approach. It has limitations, but it's quite a useful approach because it's very simple in its categorization of what a system looks like. So it talks about 3 main categories: knowledge and technology, actors and networks, and institutions. And we find that language is something that most stakeholders in this field can relate to. We've also been focusing on theory of change methodology. And for those of you who have been attending this conference and various different sessions of this conference, you'll know that there's quite a lot of discussion in the transformative innovation policy field around theories of change. Even if you're not a monitoring, evaluation and learning person, a MEL person, it's a useful concept to help people think about problems that need to be solved and directionality of effort. And it's particularly useful for this sector because it helps them think beyond market issues and business issues, and helps them think through a set of outcomes and impacts that they, as a sector, would like to work towards. And we've also been trying to get them to think about this using a pathways approach. So thinking about the different routes to reach their intended outcomes and goals. And it's a way of getting them to think about and recognize the fact that there are different market segments, that there are different actors and motivations and different solutions, but all within the same space. So it allows the sector, by thinking through the pathways that the sector might be able to develop, it helps them think and prioritize and plan the responsibilities of different actors, the resources that they have or that they need to find, and ensures that there's sufficient capacity within the sector to achieve the solutions and get to where they want to be in the 5 years' time. If you can just move to the next slide, you'll see the theory of change that we're working with, and the different types of pathways, and where this all comes together with innovation systems thinking. In terms of our experience from a capacity building perspective, working with different stakeholders, it's been difficult to get everybody on the same page, especially when there's a lot of new concepts here for them. I mean, we're coming from a very different field, the social sciences, and we're talking to people who predominantly build microdigesters, or lobby for more people to buy and use microdigesters. So trying to get people to think about quite academic concepts has been difficult. But we've also had to learn new languages ourselves, the languages that they speak in this field. And so it's been about both sets of stakeholders, those from business, those from the policy field, and us as academics, moving out of our comfort zones and actually moving out of the path dependency that we have to certain concepts and ideas, and starting to think differently and start of a common language or a new language which we can all work with. I think the second thing I just want to leave us with, and I'm not going to dwell on this for any of the time, so we've got some time for comments and questions, is there needs to be lots of opportunities for discussion. And we started off quite slowly and with very few interactions, and the interactions that we had were often quite bilateral interactions. And over time, the design of our project with the sector has developed into quite large stakeholder meetings, in order to get a range of voices on the table and in everybody's earshot. And the other thing related to that is that this has all required quite a lot of time, and the time it takes to build capacity and to build those shared languages should not be underestimated. So I would just like to stop there, and I will now hand back to Nabila, and we can move to the discussion section. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Becky, and to the team. The third segment is an open flow engagement that will be managed to the chat, and we would like to have you as the audience interact with us about possible collaborations and opportunities at the chair. I'll be handing over to Dr. Rob Byrne to take over from here. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Nabila. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for presenting the various aspects of the chair, the chair's work. As hopefully you, one message you picked up, there's an awful lot going on. And we don't have that much time to talk about it all, unfortunately. So we may only be able to really deal with Margretta's questions, which she has in the chat. So I'll go straight to those questions and then see where we go from there. But if you do have something to contribute, then please do add it to the chat, and if we get there, we get there. If we don't, then apologies. So maybe I'll start with Erica. Margaret has asked two questions, really. From the work done so far, what are the key insights that studies on transformative change and sustainable development in African countries can bring to the table? And in which areas do the system theories you're using need to be, in quotes, corrected based on, let's say, those insights? So maybe, Erica, if you can try and address those two very straightforward questions first.
Thanks so much, Margareta, for first for your interest in the chair, and also for raising very, very important questions. Obviously, these questions are they serve some elaboration that we probably don't have time to address here, but I will try nevertheless and leave time for others to also come in. So there are some insights that we're getting from the research that we've done so far. Maybe just to be very brief, some of the key areas that have emerged, perhaps some of the areas that are central for Africa, and one of our sort of, something that we can clearly identify is that some of the key areas that are central for Africa remain under-researched in the systems literature. And I can talk about types of actors. The informal actors has been discussed in this conference as well, how absent informality is, which is a central aspect of African economy and society. Types of knowledge, indigenous knowledge systems, and how absent they are from the systems literature. The role of households, for instance, key actors that are central to the workings of African realities, and they remain unseen and under-researched. And I think this is one of the key insights. Another one is the unsuitability of the common indicators and measurements that we have available at hand. And Sesti here, and Glenda can probably elaborate more on that, since they're doing a lot of forward-looking work in covering some of those spaces that remain sort of under-researched and underlooked. Not only to monitor our progress towards transformative change, but also in terms of policy evaluation and monitoring and learning. I think this is a very important area, measurement and indicators. And then thirdly, perhaps I can talk about the importance of thinking of academic research as something that needs to happen hand in hand with practice. We have been, African academia, I think, to a large extent, particularly in our field, has adopted theoretical frameworks that have been developed in very different contexts to ours, and they provide very, very useful tools and that have taken us very far in trying to understand our systems and what can be done and the role of policy. But there are several ways in which, if we don't test them in practice, we don't see the ways in which certain circles don't fit into the square. In other words, we don't see how they need to be expanded, how they need to be adapted to African realities. And I think here, what we are doing is we are embarking in this process of engaging in empirical research, but with a lens to expand and adapt the conceptual tools. So our motivation and our intention from the outset is to be able to come up with frameworks that fit our reality. In a way, we're behaving like user innovators, right? So we are using existing frameworks, but with a mindset of changing and innovating and adapting to our context. Maybe let me perhaps stop there and let others come in.
Brilliant, thanks, Erica. That's fantastic. Glenda, let me ask you to try and address this as well, whether that is, and this is up to you, whether that's wearing, strictly speaking, your SESTI hat, or whether you want to focus on capacity issues or whatever it might be. But yeah, please do.
Well, I think Erica's put her finger on it, and it's about taking frameworks that are used elsewhere, because we do want to keep up with the global theoretical frontier. And then I call it experimenting with them in our own empirical contexts. And I think Erica used the word expanding, but I would say it's also about stretching. So taking the concepts and stretching them, or seeing what else do we need to add in to be able to have proper explanatory value in our context. Let me give you one example. We did a lot of work in our colloquium around transformative outcomes. And we got in some of the projects to speak on how they had used and reflect on how they were able to use the concept of transformative outcomes. And we realized that the kind of 12 transformative outcomes that had been theoretically designed out of some of the global concepts could actually not apply in our context, and that we need to do some work to think what are the different transformative outcomes that are related to our conditions and our challenges. So we don't have the answers yet, but we found the spaces, and we know some of the processes to use it. So similarly, when it comes to the indicators and measures for example, we have R&D as a key measure. What we are trying to do is stretch those measures by saying, how do we see how much R&D is oriented to green economy or to health or to water research, etc., so that we're answering new questions. And then we're also looking at the data and saying, how can we create new measures that actually can help us to understand the patterns of innovation that do exist, rather than looking with a lens that makes you say there is no innovation taking place. Thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you, Glenda and Erica. I guess we're basically out of time. So Nabila, I can hand over to you if you want to close the session. But first, before doing so, absolutely no apology needed, Margrethe, for the straightforward questions that you asked us there to get those fabulous responses from Erica and Glenda. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Glenda and Erica. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your interest and the time, and look forward to engaging with you in the future. Please feel free to contact us should you have any questions or wish to engage further, and follow us at UJTRCTI on Twitter for more updates. Once more, thank you. Bye, everyone.